Bigfoot stomping through the pines, aliens sending secret signs, EVPs in the dead of night, ghosts dancing in the pale moonlight. Paranormal for long, we bring it to ya. Truth behind the veil, gotta pursue ya. Talking about the strange, the freaky, the weird. Fearless, we dive wherever you see ya. Portal opens in the woods so deep, creatures crawl from a timeless sleep. Lights in the sky, they flicker and blaze, signals from beyond these earthly days.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It's Saturday.
We got great guest on tonight. We've been waiting for this one for a while, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Oh, Greg Ogles.
Yeah. So,
I know Jason's got a bio that's like 16 pages long.
nah, it ain't that long.
He's going to read.
I want to thank everybody for watching and listening.
Absolutely.
Hey, I got us on there.
Oh, look at that. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
I do want to say though that we did, buy and watch his last film.
Oh yeah.
Don't you go to relicfilms.com?
Yeah, relicfilms.com.
Yeah, you could buy that. And I would say if you're into Bigfoot, I would buy it. It has some pretty interesting things that happen that, we'll talk a little bit about tonight, but I would say buy it, purchase it, watch it again. I think I watched it twice in a row because there's some pretty interesting stuff that goes on. So
the Downey Booger's good too. You can watch it on
Philo?
No, shoot. I've got it. I watch it every day.
Because I watched it.
Tubi.
That's
Tubi.
it. Tubi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Greg is a filmmaker, researcher with Relic Films, and he's made a lot of contributions to the exploration of the paranormal and cryptid phenomena through his documentary film works. So he is known for his two films that dive into these mysterious subjects, which is The Legend of the Downey Booger and Cryptic Expeditions, which is The Land Between the Lakes. So The Legend of the Downey Booger is a documentary that investigates a local legend surrounding a mysterious creature. And I think it's in Alabama. It investigates, a local legend surrounding this place in Alabama. So he served as a director and executive producer on that film, which explores accounts and potential evidence related to, that region's phenomena. His other work was Cryptic Expeditions, The Land Between the Lakes. It takes viewers into an area known for its paranormal mysteries and cryptid sightings, including reports of Bigfoot and Dogman.
That's why we want to go.
Yeah, we do. So Greg was involved in bringing, these investigations and accounts to the screen. And I know he's working on another movie. I can't think of the name of it. I'll let him tell you. So we're going to bring him on, Mr. Greg Ogles.
How you doing, Greg?
Hey, buddy.
Howdy. Thanks
Glad
for
to have
having me
you.
on.
Thanks for coming on. We're excited. Like I said, behind the scenes, we're been waiting for this for a while now. So last time we got to talk, if all the people out there that watch us all the time and stuff got to kind of see a little bit of you on our podcast anyway, when we were at the Bigfoot festival there in Townsend. Mm-hmm. And you so kindly spent 45 minutes of your time talking to us there. So we were happy to have that happen too.
Yeah, it was
a pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess we'll ask probably the easiest one that we ever ask is what got you into this field as far as the paranormal, but then also into filming?
Well, when I was a kid, I had a UFO experience. I mean, I was a little kid, and that sort of stuck with me for most of my life. But it gave me an interest into the paranormal. So I grew up watching In Search of Leonard Nimoy and all those other fabulous shows, and I kept on it just kind of stuck with me, into finding Bigfoot and all these other shows, these fabulous shows that come out. And one day just decided to get up off the couch because I was really tired of hunting and fishing. So I was like, man, I need a new hobby, so yeah, I decided just to get up off the couch and actually go do, and I met up with a group and we got out, and from the first outing with that group, I was hooked. And in the very beginning, I wanted to do this. I wanted to do just like everybody else that gets into it. I wanted to prove its existence, right? And by trade, I'm a traffic engineer, and part of what I had done was investigate very complicated crashes. So what I would do there is I would take, lots of information, and then sort of piece them together, sort of like a puzzle, and I would figure out what exactly happened. Because a lot of these crashes were very complex. You would think on the face of things that it would, maybe it's the traffic light or something like that, but maybe it was the traffic light, maybe it's the whole timing of the entire system, that really causes and contributes to a complicated crash. So I was used to being an investigator. It's the same tools that a cop would use when they're investigating crimes. You just find out pieces of information, you put it together, and it paints you a picture. Well, that's what I was very used to doing, and I was very used to documenting things with the cameras and whatnot. So that's what I just started doing initially. I was wanting to just document things that I found that I was finding. And I was sitting here thinking, I was like, wow, one day when I'm gone, there's going to be nothing left other than a few stripes on a road for a few years for somebody to remember me by. So I said, hey, I'm already documenting things. Let's make a documentary. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really found out how hard it could be.
A pain, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I knew nothing about making a documentary at first. If there was a list of everything that you can do wrong, I made that list. I did everything, ass backwards, essentially. And it was a huge learning curve for me to be able to have an on-camera presence and talk in such a way that it doesn't sound like you're talking to a bunch of engineers,
Right.
They're like dry scientists, a bunch of nerds like, what's the curve on that? I had to overcome all of that,
Right.
and actually be entertaining. So they actually missed a lot of very, very good evidence because I didn't have that on-camera presence in the very beginning. Literally, our first day out when we were, my camera guy and I were going out, we came across footprints, and I was like, man, I said, this is going to be easy. I said, what's everybody, what's the big deal? Because literally an hour and a half into it. Now we're deep in the woods, but we found these footprints that came off this little knoll to the side of a pond, and then went halfway around the pond and back out into the woods. And I was like, man, this is easy. These footprints were like 16 inches long, 7 inches wide-ish, and 5.5 feet in the gate, or the stride rather. And I was like, this is going to be easy. And again, that same day we found more footprints. I was like, man, if this is going to be a trophy for finding Bigfoot, I'm going to find it. I'm going to get it.
The first time I'm out.
Yeah, the first time I'm out, I'm gonna get it. So we were out that first day, and I saw this game trail, and I saw something really, really strange by the just a few feet into the woods by this field, by this game trail. It looked like a giant bird's nest, huge, but on its side. If you could imagine a bird's nest, and you take it and you flip it up, that's what it looked like.
Huh.
And we was just kind of playing around. I'd kind of get in it and hey, I can stand up in here just about. And but a little bit out from that game trail, we found more footprints. But instead of them being 5.5 feet apart, they were 8.5 to 9 feet apart.
Oh.
And
So
of
that
course, it
was
was a game
right.
trail. Yeah, and of course, it was a game trail,
Mhm.
and there's lots of deer tracks and everything else there. And I was like, wait a minute, a longer stride means that he's moving faster.
Mm.
And crap, did we just find a hunting blind? Were these things getting into that wad of sticks and whatnot, and just sitting there waiting on a deer or something to walk by, and then chase it down and have dinner?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. With you saying that you used to hunt and fish all the time,
Mhm.
and you wanted a new hobby, so you decided to do this because it was something that was interesting to you. But do you think being a hunter and stuff has helped a little bit with the tracking and finding of some of the footprints and stuff that you've done?
With the tracking, I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the skills that I was brought up as a little kid. Here in the
Mhm.
South, and a long time ago, we had to hunt to be able to supplement our food.
Right.
So it was very important for us to be able to find our game, particularly after you get shot at a deer. A lot of times they don't go down immediately. You have to go and you have to find them. But you also have to be able to use your tracking senses to be able to find out where they're going, when they're going, how long they had passed by, what kind of deer it is, how many they are. That you use all those skills to be able to find optimize your hunting locations.
Right.
And this really did help because and this is where my hunting and science sort of combined it. I was looking at these footprints, and you could measure the depth of the footprints, and I was like, well, let me find out how heavy this animal was. So I would step right beside these footprints, and we would do a size comparison between how deep I could make a footprint at a known weight and how deep it made a footprint, but I didn't know its weight. So just did some simple math there and came up with an estimate of between 750 and 850 pounds.
Wow.
So
that's big individual.
It was very heavy, very, very heavy.
Overly overstoked Oscars ask, what do you think Bigfoot is? A person, an animal? What do you think?
It's a good question. Because also when we were in that field with the footprints being 8.5 feet apart, they stopped in the middle of the field. Just stopped.
See that? That's the part of the woo that Jason and I getting into. We really
yeah. So at the time, I didn't think much of it. I was like, well, maybe it did like a bionic man and it jumped, 200 feet to the other edge of the woods or something. But the consistency of the soil was the same.
Right.
It didn't hop on any rocks, and it certainly didn't just magically stop and then jump in reverse, exactly hitting the footprints it did in reverse.
And see, that's the problem that I have with with the people who say that there's no woo and that these are, you know, they could only be flesh and blood or just whatever. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't be because they leave evidence, but at the same time, they're definitely not backtracking through their own steps perfectly.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, that's just a probability that I'm not
right.
ready to entertain.
Well, and if they're, you know, we all know from just walking our whole lives, can you take as big strides backwards as you can forwards?
Nope.
I can't.
Nope.
I can't.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's fact.
yeah. I just don't see that being the case.
Yeah,
So that leaves the question: where did it go?
right.
Um, you know, there were other things that we had found that day, but you know, as we started to like investigate Bigfoot, and you know, we wanted to get one on camera, right? So after that first day, we were like thinking, if I mean, really, we were thinking this was going to be easy. You know, we're just going to get some night vision cameras, and we're going to go out, and they should frequent this spot. Years went by, and nothing.
Wow.
I'm talking years. Now, as we were investigating, it's not like we didn't have the anecdotal evidence of Bigfoot happening. You know, the rock throwing, whoops, growls, and the huffs, and the you know those all the anecdotal evidence that you know
Right.
we experienced, but we were not getting anything on night vision, and this was becoming frustrating, very very frustrating, because we know that. Okay, for instance, you know, we're walking down a trail and you can hear something paralleling you.
Mhm.
And when you walk, it walks. When you stop, it stops. And eventually you would come to a place where you know you should be able to see what it was, but you can't see anything, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, all this time I'm gathering these pieces of the puzzle together. And, you know, as there was this one time we were out, and you know my whole paradigm got shifted when I started to see little balls of light start floating through the woods, and I was like, oh, okay, so we're not alone out here. You know, somebody else is out here with a flashlight, and you know, you hit them with a thermal camera and there's nothing there on thermal. I'm like, oh well, that's interesting.
Hmm.
And I mean, these balls of light are very, very bright. I mean, they're very much like a flashlight,
Mhm.
except it's not. hmm, You know, a flashlight would protrude a beam out from it,
Right.
and there's no beam coming out, so it's not illuminating. You know, like the forest, like from a beam, but you
Right.
know, there's a little bit of light coming off. You know, off in its surroundings. So this was very perplexing at first. You know, I would be able to see it, but my partner would not at first. And it took a while for him to be able to see these things. And for lack of another term, I'm going to call them orbs.
Mhm.
And, you know, these orbs, they would frequent whenever we had anecdotal Bigfoot evidence. Um, and, you know, we saw them pretty often. I mean, it was a common occurrence for us to be able to see these things after a while, you know. And I became so frustrated when I was making Downey Booger. I was like, "Hey, look, guys, I'm getting frustrated. This film is just taking way too long, and we're not getting anything on night vision. So let's go off and rent us a very good high-end camera and at least get some of these orbs." uh, we can at least show something. And sure enough, you know, we went out on our last investigation when doing Booger, and we saw orbs. You know, this one orb in particular just kind of hung out with us the entire time. And I mean, for hours. These orbs are not, you know, a second or two. Sometimes they are, but You know, these orbs are, you know, a lot of times we'll see they hang out for hours with us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that night was kind of crazy because we had a lot of activity. And anybody who's been out in this field for a while kind of knows that if you've got like electronics or anything like that, that you begin to have problems with electronics.
A lot of malfunctions, a lot of
Yes.
battery drainages and things like that
Yes,
happen.
file corruptions, battery drainage,
Yeah.
just sometimes just not even turning on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, we experienced tons of that, you know, and I didn't know it was common because one of the reasons why people didn't ever hear of me or my team was because we didn't want to be influenced by anybody else's opinions. We wanted to make our own opinions about what we were seeing and what we were experiencing. And so, quite frankly, some of this stuff that we were seeing was just so outlandish that we didn't think anybody would believe it. Oh, seriously, you know, because there was these instances of missing time that we would come across. There's these instances of disembodied voices, in mimicry of voices. And you know, we thought we can't put this on film. Nobody's going to believe it. I mean, it's absolutely true,
Yeah.
but who's going to believe it? So you know, we wanted really tangible evidence, you know, to put in.
Mm-hmm.
So we excluded a lot of the woo stuff from our first film, but the orbs we saw a lot. And I was like, hey, look, guys, let's actually get some of these orbs on camera. So that very night of our last investigation, you know, we was getting, like I said, we was getting a lot of activity, and I had a thermal camera with us, and I saw something crawling down from a hill, and it went to a log, and it kind of pushed up on a log, and was like looking at us for a second, and then just vanished, just disappeared off of thermal. I'm like, you know, yeah, that's just weird.
Now on the first movie, that is the one that you do have orbs showing on that one part, wasn't it? That kind of bluish colored orb that's in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
I've actually got orbs on both of them, but it's a kind of a blue white orb that's off in the woods.
Kind of gets bright for a second, then it kind of dims back down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying, "Hey, look at me over here. Don't pay attention to what's going on over there."
Right.
That was interesting because asked Jason. You know, we do a lot of paranormal investigations, tons of them, and I'm a big orb naysayer because what a lot of people call orbs is usually stuff like dust particles that IR or something illuminates just right, or a bug that IR is illuminating just right. And if you have an objective eye at it, you know, you're going to say, yeah, that's dust, or yeah, that's a bug, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what that was an orb. I mean, it was beautiful. It was putting out its own light. You could tell it wasn't an IR reflection or anything. It was putting out that beautiful bluish colored white light.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching that, I was like, now that's an orb. Mm-hmm. If anybody ever wants to know what an orb is, you watch that film, because it shows what an orb's supposed to look like.
And if you notice when it started going berserk,
mm-hmm.
And we didn't see this while we were there, and we saw it in post-production. There's this thing crawling between us and the orb, you know, and it's on all fours. And you can, when you blow it up on a really, really large screen and manipulate it a little bit, you can see the arms and the legs and everything. It's like an old crap moment, you know, because the camera that we were using was passive. It didn't project any kind of light at all.
Right.
It was a passive camera. Essentially could just see in the dark, and it saw the thing there, the camera did, and it tries to focus on it. Right. So when this camera's trying to focus on the crawler, I call it the crawler, The orb in the background just goes berserk, like, hey, bleep, 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 look at me. And the camera does finally give up and then focuses in on the orb. And the thing in the middle, the crawler is like, oh crap, and finally crawls off screen.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it denotes too that that the orb is there, almost like you said, it's almost there as a distraction, to help what you call the crawler stay out of sight, because you're so fixated on what is that.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it allows that thing to come in closer to see what's going on or whatever. And it's fascinating. That part of the show is.
Yeah. And like I say, that happened, but we didn't see the crawler while we were there. I mean, we were looking at the orb because the orb was bright. It was really, really bright. And, and for people that haven't experienced orbs like this, I'm talking a true orb, and I'm not talking dust, the ones that you can see and that they stay there with you. They respond to stimuli. They're either intelligent or under intelligent control, one or the other. I don't know which, but they they respond to stimuli. You say, hey, bud, can you make yourself brighter? They'll make themselves brighter. And it seems like when they do something like that, they'll use up a lot of their energy, and they'll be dim for a while, then they'll come back. But we've had them follow us. We're like, dude, it's late. Okay, fun hanging out with you, but we're going back to camp. So we go back to camp, and then orbs come with us.
Now, after looking and seeing in post-production, though, that crawler, does that make you wonder that as many times as you have seen those orbs, that something else was not lurking around you at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one that is, as a matter of fact, I was only going to do one film, because the Downey Booger just took so long and all that. And I was just kind of run out of gas, essentially. Yeah. And after we saw the crawler, and we're like, dadgummit, a lot of time, and I start going back and associating with when we'd see the orbs, we'd have all this other anecdotal evidence going around. It's like, there's got to be some sort of connection between the orbs and the Bigfoots or something. And that really inspired me to do another film. And that is when I actually started to search around and start talking to other people and seeing what other people have experienced. And I met this guy named Trey Hudson, who's doing this thing called the Meadow Project. And it's sort of dubbed as the Skinwalker Ranch of the South. And sure enough, there was a lot of crazy things going on there too. So I was like, wow, there is so much more to our reality in this universe than what we are told. So I say all that to say, going back to that question that the viewer asked, what is Bigfoot? I don't know, but let me tell you what. While they're here, they they leave footprints and they leave handprints, and we've got handprints of them. They eat. They probably poop, and I'm sure they have stinky breath. All of that while they're here. However, I think they have abilities that we don't. And I really think that they probably don't come from here. If you go back to and start researching some of the old Indian legends, they'll sit in there and tell you that they're a spirit animal or spirit being.
They like to say that they're from both worlds too. They're from the spirit world and from this world, that they live in both.
They walk in both. Yeah.
And I interpret that as them having abilities that we don't. Like another dimension. People, 2,000 years ago or 500 years ago or even 100 years ago, they didn't know about other dimensions. It's like they call it the spirit world.
Yes.
Right? So that's kind of what I interpret that as. And I think it was very correct. They were simply explaining things in a vocabulary that they could understand.
Yep.
And they were communicating things that they saw.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
like the orbs. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
researchers leave those types of things out, but that was a big thing in a lot of Native American legends and lore about them, was the orbs that were
Mhm.
also around these beings. You know.
Mhm. So, yeah, I really did try and find the connection between orbs and Bigfoot in the Land Between the Lakes. Um, I'm not sure that I found that connection, but I think I have. I think I did establish that there is a connection. Because in the Land Between the Lakes, we saw the orbs too,
Yeah.
um, and with the editor, he and I kind of went back and forth about some of the orb stuff, and I wanted more of it in there. And he's like, "Well, okay, well, the movie's already 90 minutes long, an hour and 35 minutes long. How long is it going to be? And at some point, you have to leave evidence on the chopping block, you know."
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just kind of where it went for things to make sense and the flow to not get as boring as some films could be, by just beating a dead horse. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the orbs that we saw there were these long lasting orbs, and one would sort of divide into two, then the next there's three, and then they'd kind of coalesce back into one.
Wow.
And if you hear Adam Davies, he's sitting there saying, "Oh my God, they're dancing."
Yeah. Yes. He was funny during that, like, especially when the growling started happening.
Mhm.
He's like, I've been to, and he starts naming off all these places, and he's like, I've never had anything like that happen.
Oh, well, I mean, if you could actually be there, I wish we had an invention called, and I need to probably put this out there one time, feel-o-vision.
Yeah.
Feel-o-vision. Yeah, if you could feel these growls, uh, when we were there, if you could actually feel them like we did, you would understand.
Yeah.
Your entire insides just starts vibrating, just and you could. It's like being right next to somebody who's playing real loud bass in a car,
Yeah.
or right next to fireworks or cannons or something, where it go boom, and you can actually feel the concussion. The boom.
Mhm.
That's the way it felt. It's
Wow.
exactly the way it felt. And I'll just describe it scientifically. It was a sound pressure wave.
Right.
It's exactly what it was. See, I mean, I recognized it, and my buddy, my camera guy, goes nuts. He's like,
You
"Oh my God, we gotta leave. They're
see
here."
him start shaking, like he's
Yeah.
shaking. I mean, physically shaking,
It's
he can't
pretty
even
Well, it
turn
funny.
the
was.
camera on. I mean, he's like,
Yeah, he's like, "I want to leave. We gotta leave. We gotta," and he was wanting to run.
Yeah.
So what you
Fight or
don't
flight,
see,
you know?
in that is I physically had him by the back of the coat, holding him in one place as I was starting to wind up my camera, right?
Yeah.
And it was during all of that commotion is when I actually looked up and saw the Bigfoot. It was standing right there in front of my truck. I'm at the back right corner of it, and he's at the front left corner of the truck,
Yeah.
and he's just standing there looking at us.
Hmm.
And I stand it and I freeze, and I'm like, "Oh crap, there it is." And I'm like, "Okay, this is it. We're dead." This thing is huge. I can't tell you about all of the build, because I could only see the silhouette of it from like the bottom of the chest up. But
Mhm.
its thing was wide. It was
Mhm.
very, very wide, and if I had to guess, a height between 9 and 10 feet tall.
Wow.
So, um,
Huge.
That
when I hear the camera whine up, when it turns on, it makes a little whine noise. And
Yeah.
I look down to make sure I can put it on night vision, and then the display screen comes on, and then that's a big rookie mistake. I looked into that display screen, and all of my night vision was gone. I couldn't see a damn thing after that. So now I'm trying to find the Bigfoot. And if you look real close, I caught its eyes. If you look real close, I caught its eyes when it's in front of the truck. And then Adam starts saying, "Hey, put the camera on Brent," because he was like, but all of that was true. I mean, Adam's military training kicked in. He's like, "Hey, let's not be pushed around by this thing. Let's push it away. Let's push it back." So we came together as a small group, and there was another small group that was on the other end of the cemetery that we were trying to get with us, because this was a very potentially dangerous situation, because every time we would take a step forward, this thing would growl. Just, I can't mimic it, but it would respond to us, moving forward to it. It would take a step forward, it'd growl, and it was almost like a tug of war. This encounter, even though it's not this long in the film, this encounter lasts 25-30 minutes.
Holy smokes, that's a long time.
It's a very long time.
Yeah.
And this whole time it's growling. Right?
Especially when, most people, when they get things, it's sporadic. It's stones, like you was talking earlier, stones throwing or wood knocks or just, things like that. But when you're physically that close to one for that amount of time, that'd be insane.
If you talk to Adam and my camera guy was wanting to call his mom and say, "Hey, we're not coming home."
This is the end.
Yeah, this is it.
Pushing up daisies.
Yeah. But even then, when Adam said he got he said he got extremely concerned, was when there was another one that was throwing rocks from a different angle. And I said, "Adam," "Hey, we got rocks thrown, from our left." And we were physically seeing the one back out into the woods because its eyes started glowing. His eyes started turning like a red, an amberish red, sort of. And then, we had good sight on it, where it was. Then we got the rocks start coming from our left. And then Adam's like, "Oh my God, they're flanking us." And he knew what it was doing. It was luring us so that something else could come around and attack from a position where, we were vulnerable from.
Right. Well, if you get everybody focused here, you're not focused on what's coming back and around behind or beside you. So
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what was happening.
Right.
And, it seemed like, when the other group coalesced with us, that it seemed like things calmed down a little bit. And like, again, I kind of go back to the camera stuff, after we did a few, interviews immediately right after the encounter, the batteries on the cameras just died, within a minute of each other. And they were fully charged. They should have lasted all night. Shouldn't have been a problem with them. So after the batteries died on the cameras, I was like, well, crap, there's not much else we can do here, as far as filming. So I was like, well, maybe I can go up in front of the truck and find some prints, right? So I go up in front of the truck where I saw it standing, and the roadway was real gravelly. So like, well, shit, I'm not going to find any prints here. So I was like, I wonder if they're still around. So I'm like, I'm going to do an experiment. So I growl. I'll just go real loud, and as I had growled, Brent's kind of bebopping up to the front of the truck with me, and immediately after the growl, you hear boom, boom, boom. 3 stomps, real loud. And Brent looks over at me. He's like, "Hey, it responded to you." I'm like, "Yeah, it stomped." Yeah, I'm gonna do it again, right? So I growled again, just really, really loud, and immediately again, boom, boom, boom. But this time it was just right outside the edge of the roadway, probably 50 feet away from us when it stomped this time.
Whoa.
And he looked over at me and said, "Stop doing that." Yeah, I agree with Brad. I'm going to stop because, hey, we wasn't armed or anything. So, we kind of went back with where everybody else was. And, that was, pretty much the end of that night. But, we had so much adrenaline going for us that night. It was unreal. And I hated to actually leave the situation, but Martin was a little bit sick, and it was tough to see if it was a good decision to stay or not.
Right.
My instincts said stay, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of other people wanted to go, so we went. But I think the Bigfoot was still there. They're like, "Hey, we ran them out."
Yeah, we did what we wanted.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Uh,
So when we went back there again a couple of days later, we were like, okay, if they actually think and they strategize, they're probably going to not do what they did to begin with. They're probably going to do something else. And sure enough, it was what we thought was a quiet night. But after we go back and review the footage, they were there, but their eyes were glowing, and you could see them off in the woods, maybe 100 or 50 yards out in the woods. Their eyes were glowing. And there was, I think, probably 3 or 4 of them.
wow.
They were kind of moving, but you have to kind of look pretty hard. But you could see the eyes. They sure enough, and they took a different strategy that night. Is my whole point to that story.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's your take on the LBL? Because we're wanting to do an investigation there. Probably, if we could do it, it's going to be, I don't know, somewhere around maybe fall where it's not as warm out. But what's your take on it? Because from everything that from Martin Groves and everything, I mean, that place seems to be pretty a hotbed, I guess, for both Dogman and for Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to go back there, and we're going to sort of be hunting for Dogman. I don't know that I had an encounter with Dogman while we were there. I can't say that I did. I can't say that I didn't because we had other encounters there that were not on film that was interesting. So one of the interesting things there about the LBL is that it's at the intersection of some ley lines.
Yes.
I'm not an expert on ley lines, but I know that there's a lot of special meaning to some of these ley lines, and that's about all I know about them. Right. But I did look them up, and there's an intersection of them right there. Something else that's interesting there is that there's a lot of negative history.
Yes.
Yep. With the government giving people land and then coming back in, later and taking it away and then killing folks that didn't want to leave. And, it just, it's got a lot of negativity there that I think was captured in some of the minerals there. Mm-hmm. There were places where I would walk around, and there's lots of quartz in the ground. And we have noticed that whenever we've experienced particularly lots of orbs, there's been lots of quartz in the ground. So maybe this quartz has the ability. Well, I know it has the ability. If you squeeze quartz,
Yep.
you'll get an electric charge out of it, right?
Yep.
Piezoelectric
You
charge.
you could rub them together and create light too. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there, if you find it just laying all over the ground there, there's got to be a lot of it just deeper in the ground, right?
yes.
Stands to reason. So then you got all this weight compressing that quartz. So it's releasing a lot of energy. So maybe that creates portals, because I saw a portal while I was there. To me, this portal that I saw
Mhm.
was more paradigm shifting than the Bigfoot that I saw. I
Really?
wasn't able to talk about it for a while, because when I saw that portal, I could actually look into somewhere else. I don't know where it led to, but where we were, it was nighttime. Wherever it was daytime.
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
lush. Yeah, it was real lush, kind of like a jungle, sort of. Yeah, and the portal was rectangular, and it had like 90-degree angles on it. And I was in awe. I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And then somebody shined a flashlight out toward that way, and it disappeared.
Hmm.
And then a few minutes later, an orb came up right from where that portal was. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. Now, when I left there, particularly after that portal event, I started thinking back to some of these other encounters that we've had. Okay, lots of orbs around where Bigfoot are, right? When we were at the Meadow, we interviewed Trey and his group, and there was a couple of people that went into what they would characterize as a portal.
Mhm.
Both of those people that went into that are now deceased. They both passed away with aggressive cancer afterwards.
Wow.
And then I look at the portal that I saw, and then an orb come out, and I've got a somebody that I know. I can't say their name, but they claim to have video evidence of a orb turning into a Bigfoot. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe to be able to traverse a portal, you have to be in energy form.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, it's bad for your health.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You think maybe they take this form when they come here?
I think that they probably have the ability to take that form, maybe at will. But particularly, I think they can sense portals when they open. I don't think they can open portals. I think they maybe be able to sense them
Gotcha.
and traverse back and forth
Mhm.
through these portals. But I think you have to do so in an energy form. Otherwise, I think it's bad for your health. Bad for tissue, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is and it's just what I think. I'm not trying to claim it as the truth. It's just, hey, look, I've got all these pieces of a puzzle that I've been putting together for all these years, and unless I have these pieces of the puzzle arranged in a way that they shouldn't be, that's what it's leading me toward right now. Is that they have an ability that we don't.
Yep.
They can transform themselves into an energy form and then traverse through the portals.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah. Are you familiar? He's deceased now, but Scott Carpenter.
Yes.
Have you seen some of his work on the portals?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And during the making of The Vanished, I went to Scott Carpenter's location. Particularly, I was able to discern where the exact location where he had a camera in the back, and there was a portal that started to open up, and there was an entity that was kind of like coalescing in
Yep.
the portal. I went to that exact location, where that portal was. And sure enough, we had strange things happen. And the strange things that happened to Natalie, she's in our Natalie Spearman. She's in she's in the film. She didn't know we were at that location. You know, she just thought we was out in the woods somewhere. She didn't know we were at that location. And you'd have to hear her explain these feelings that she got and the orbs that we saw. We saw tons of orbs, tons of them.
Really?
Yeah. And and again at that location, they responded to stimuli. Like when we would be just laughing and giggling and having a good time, acting like teenagers, and all of a sudden these orbs would get real close and pop, it'd be real bright, and they wouldn't stay on long, but they definitely responded to stimuli. Definitely did.
Night's Watch says always tons of orbs when we go out.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, Jason. Where were you leading with Scott?
I was just, I don't know. I just wondered, you was talking about portals. I was wondering if you had seen that specific video where
yeah, absolutely.
They had
I'm so fascinated with portals now. It's kind of like when somebody sees Bigfoot. A couple of things happen to them. They either get extremely scared, never go out into the woods again, or you become obsessed with them.
Right.
You're like, oh, I want to see more. I want to see more. I want to.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
like gold beaver.
Yeah, right. That happened to me when I saw the orbs. I love orb watching, by the way. Just absolutely love them. I can't get enough of them. When I see orbs, I stay until I can't.
I'd love to see some orbs.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they are so wonderful. When you go to the LBL, you'll see them.
We were investigating a graveyard. One of our first investigator. When we started back
when our first really recorded investigations.
Yeah, we went to this graveyard, and through the camera now I could see these little orbs dancing around near the graves. But when David couldn't see them.
Yeah, with your naked eye you could see them.
When I would look over the camera, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what was happening that night. I do know the batteries died all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
We wasn't there 10 minutes.
Huh.
We just charged.
The batteries died?
Yeah. The batteries died.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part that I caught before the battery died was a red orb.
In the woods.
It was in the woods. It was glowing like, I don't know what, but.
Mm-hmm.
And when the lights went out, the battery all died, and David's over at the edge of the cemetery, and I'm saying, David, I'm getting in the truck. Gotta go. It's too dark. It was.
I was like, what are you doing? We just barely got here. He's like, everything's dead. I'm going to the truck. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
We just got here.
That happens so often. There was another part during the making of The Land Between the Lakes where I was interviewing Mark Green, and we had a place in Talladega National Forest, and he was telling about a hunter that was unalived by something, animal.
Wow.
And, his head turned around and just all kind of just goofed up, a way that he died in a way that I never would want to die that way. Anyway, so while we were there, at this one location, I had 10 batteries, 10 that I had spent charging up. Every one of those would not work. None of them would work. And it would move out of this location for a little bit. Everything works fine. Or move back into it. They all die again.
That's
know?
interesting.
Yeah. So we had to, and instead of filming exactly where we wanted to, we had to move out to a different location where the batteries would actually work. You know, it's just you have to kind of think on your feet sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
go with the flow when you're out doing that kind of stuff. Because I promise you, batteries, you'll get battery drainage and you'll get equipment failure if you're using electronics at all. I don't know what it is that's going on there, but there's something going on. However, I think maybe this, if Bigfoot's able to transform themselves into an energy form, maybe they have command of electromagnetic frequencies. Maybe they have command of being able to do something like an EM pulse.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah. Right. And maybe they could drain it to keep themselves in that form for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe they have the ability to steal, energy from different sources,
Yeah.
remotely.
Right.
Tesla said was possible that, Westinghouse and Edison
Yeah. Right.
got away with him for. But maybe that's actually possible. So I mean, I just kind of theorize about all these other possibilities, and I'm like, why do we have all this battery drainage and these equipment failures, and that kind of makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, but getting back to where you could see the orbs on the camera, that happens fairly often with us too. Eventually, you'll be able to see them with your eyes. What I think's happening is that they're in energy form, but they're so low that they can't manifest enough for you to be able to perceive it with your eyes, but the cameras can.
Right.
It's just like, we couldn't see the crawler with our eyes when we were out in the field, but the camera could.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot says it, metaphysical abilities. And I think that that's true because, it seems like they have some crazy abilities too, because it almost seems like you could see in some films and some things where they almost take on that predator effect where they can blend in with the nature around it, but then you can kind of see them move,
Yeah, a lot of people call it cloaking. I don't think it's a cloak in the scientific form of cloak.
Right.
I think as you transform into an energy form, you naturally disappear.
Right.
And, I guess, colloquially, you could call it a cloak, but it's more you're disappearing.
Right.
You're literally disappearing.
Yeah.
Because you're transforming into energy. So then you wouldn't be there's not a physical thing there. A real cloak bends light around an object.
Right.
And they're not doing that.
I know. Have you watched, dang it, what is it? What is the TV series, Jason, with Dr. Maria Mayer?
Finding Bigfoot?
No.
Expedition
Bigfoot. Yeah. So on season, was it 4, something like that? They go into this, it's not a cave really, but into this cave, and they bring this dog, this robotic dog in there. Have you seen those episodes?
I have.
So
yes. I watch all their stuff. Yes.
Yeah. So when they bring that dog in there and they're LiDARing, everything as they go in, and it's mapping the inside of this, when it gets to that one point where everything's fallen, and in the video that's on that, robotic dog's head, you don't see anything. It's natural around it. But you see this rock that's sitting there over on, the guy didn't want to take the dog past this other part because it had some collapse going. But in the LiDAR, when they got that back, you could literally see something sitting on the rock with its back turned to you. And yeah, see season 4, episode 3, that's it. When that happened, you have to say there's something going on there where the LiDAR can pick this thing up, but the camera itself cannot. And the camera is kind of like the eye, it just It can't see it. It has some kind of ability to hide itself from us, but not from the thing actually mapping everything in there.
Yeah, and I think it's done that several. I think LiDAR has caught them several times.
Yeah.
They used a drone LiDAR at one time, and they kind of caught something sort of walking
In
around,
between trees and stuff.
through the
Yeah.
trees. Yeah. Um, so, I think as LiDAR, as the technology progresses like LiDAR, and I'm sure that there's going to be other technologies coming
Right.
out before too long, that I think we'll be able to catch up with their abilities through technology.
Right.
And that we'll be able to poke that veil just a little bit more, pick at it. Back when I did the Downey Booger, the technology just wasn't even nowhere near as where it is today.
Yes.
And if I would have had the technology, if I would have had a full spectrum camera,
Yeah.
back then. Now, in the making of the Land Between the Lakes, we kind of go back out and we investigate Bankhead Forest. And anyway, so I take this glow stick, put it up in a tree, and just go back down a trail. And but I've got a full spectrum camera that I'm just kind of panning around, and you can see something standing right beside that glow stick after I go back and kind of check the footage. This you see the shoulders and the head, and it seems to be about that much taller than the glow stick. That image was like kind of scary because I'm like, crap, we didn't see that either.
And there, that makes you wonder, that you sit there, and when you look at these things and are dealing with them, especially like you guys are, because y'all are actually going out there. We've never actually gone out and looked for Bigfoot. We've always done just ghost hunting and stuff. But that's what our Land Between the Lakes is going to be about, is us trying to break into doing some of that. But when you do it enough, like y'all have and stuff, you start wondering, are these guys just that quiet? Can they move through the woods that well and be that stealthy? Or is it part of this ability to transform into that energy or whatever, and they can move somewhere, and that's why they're so stealthy?
I think you hit the nail on the head of that. I think they when they want to, I think they have an ability to move, like transform part way, and they can move, but they're not physically touching anything to make noise,
Yes.
because we did. I promise you that the thing on the camera, the crawler is probably 30 feet away from us. We didn't hear it,
Right.
and it's moving like crazy. We didn't hear anything.
Right. That was amazing where you show that.
I think they can do it on command and partially do it when they want to, and that's why you don't hear them.
Yeah.
But again, I think they can when they want to. I think when they want to, they'll make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
That's what I was wondering too, because do you believe that some of them live here in our forests and they make those home, and so they do have kids and their little family groups here and do whatever it is that they do, and then some may live wherever it is that they live, in whatever universe or parallel, parallel universe or whatever it is,
I think that's perfectly plausible. It's. I think they're just like people. They have a dynamic range of personalities and wants and needs, and there's probably different races and species of them.
Right.
Just like they are humans. There used to be different species of humans.
Yep.
And they probably have different cultures, and I don't know if they have taxes or not, but if they're in dimension and they got taxes, they probably come over here to live. I can't pay
Probably
the
do.
taxes. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's probably our version of people going up to Alaska to live.
They've been here for a very long time. I mean,
Yes.
even
Yeah.
the natives,
Yeah.
ancient natives talk about them. And
And here's something else. Okay, portals do not necessarily respect space and time. Okay, you might have a Bigfoot. Okay, say a Bigfoot's traveling through a portal. One might show up today and go back, and then when he comes back again, it might be 10,000 years ago, or it
Right.
might be 10,000 years in the future.
Right.
I don't think necessarily portals respect our perception of space and time.
Yep.
I think they can move, back and forth wherever they want to.
Well, science
Possibility.
itself,
Yeah.
right? Science itself says that if we can think of it and we can mathematically say that this is possible, that we could create it, right? Which
Mhm.
science knows that we could create a portal. We just can't get an energy source good enough to be able to do, wormholes or anything like that. But scientists say that if we can think about it, nature doesn't need us to do it, that it can do it on its own.
Mhm.
So the possibility of these things popping up randomly just here and there as they go is a very good possibility.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret. Several years ago, NASA published a paper saying that portals open up on Earth every 9 minutes or so,
Right.
somewhere on Earth.
Right.
They don't launch satellites, multi-billion-dollar satellites, not to study portals if they don't exist. They know they
Right.
exist.
Yep.
And there's a study that every 9 minutes or so, a portal opens up in and around Earth. So yeah, it's happening naturally.
Yep.
It is. It's happening naturally.
Yeah, and I think that could explain a bunch of things, especially when it comes to some of these hot spots on the Earth, like any of the Alaskan Triangle or the Bermuda Triangle, and these type of things that happen, or even paranormal or missing 411. All the missing people and stuff that go into the woods and just vanish
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Yeah. That's what my third film's about, Vanished. The Vanished. And we're going to delve into what are all the possibilities that's happening out into the national forest. Do they? It can't be just people. People killing people, and I don't think it's all Bigfoot related. And
Right.
could Bigfoot get people? I don't know, probably, maybe. There's humans that do it.
Yeah.
There's humans that do it. I'm sure that there's Bigfoot that do it. I don't
Yes.
think that they all do it, but I think there's a few that would. Possibilities of dog man, feral people, and the cave system around Tennessee. There's like 10,000 caves in just the Townsend area alone. Perhaps you are just walking along and whoop, you fall down into a cave.
Yep. Knoxville has 10-mile caverns there in Knoxville, Tennessee. So
yeah.
So I mean, and you was talking about the feral people. What's funny is that before the show was talking about it's not a possibility that we are going to be doing a investigation after the Bigfoot conference on Sunday, and this same person, some of his bosses at his work, we've got some maps over here where they said these are the places right here in the park that you will find feral people.
Whoa.
And so we're wanting to go and check some of those things out too.
Whoa.
Yeah. And this is coming from his bosses at the park services. So
wow.
Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And terrifying.
At the same
Because
that
I think I would rather run into a Bigfoot than I would a feral person.
yes,
You
I
know,
think you'd have a better chance, maybe. Because I think Bigfoot just tries to throw rocks at you to get you to go away. Every time I
Feral.
think of feral people, I think of
Heads on sticks.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
them
Or
eating.
they're wearing somebody's skin or something.
Yes, yeah, it
Ooh.
puts the lotion on its skin. Uh,
Yeah, I think I would rather run into the Bigfoots.
but it would be pretty cool to catch feral people on camera.
Oh, wouldn't it though?
That'd be amazing.
That would be.
So
It would be
maybe,
absolutely amazing. And I'd love to take you up on that offer.
yeah.
Yeah,
All
I'd
right.
love to.
I've got the papers right here on our desk right here, where they've got them all marked off for us. So
Hey, yeah, color me giddy.
that's one of the many things we'd like to do, this year
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. When we left there, like I said, there was a storm that hit, and that's going to make for some good TV. But it didn't help us any during our investigations. But one of the things that was interesting there is we kept hearing these metal sounds. It is almost kind of like a car door shutting or something like that. There were metal sounds
Oh,
that we kept hearing. And of course, we were very deep in there. There weren't any cars around.
right.
So I wanted to really investigate that more. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to because of the storm. But uh, I'm sort of on edge, about wanting to go back out and investigate that place again. In that area. You
Yeah.
know, um, well, I had a thought and it just went away. That's what happens when you get
Yeah,
older.
that's all right. I have it happen daily. I'm like, I was going to tell you something, but
And it was real good too.
2 words in, I forgot it.
Yeah.
Phew.
He has to look at me and say, "What was that show?
What was I saying? Yeah,
What was that
it?
show? What was that
you
word? How you say it? Huh?
My wife is my other brain too. My wife, I'll be talking about something, and I'll look at her and I was like, you know what it is I'm trying to say, and then she'll say it, and I'm like, see,
Mhm.
why I carry my brain around with me. um,
So,
Yeah.
how far along are you on the new film?
Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. Yeah. Okay. Let me. Are you guys familiar with something called the double slit experiment?
yes,
Okay.
yep, absolutely.
So from that particles are actually conscious,
Yep,
and they can actually go back in time and do something different,
yep,
right?
yep.
Okay. Well, this I was 30% done on my edit of The Vanished, and it was spooky and just real eerie. And it kept you on the side of your chair and just you know even had my son saying, "Dad, that's creepy," you know, and I was proud of it. And I went off on a trip. I came back, all of it was gone.
Hmm.
Like my whole edit was gone, and it said media offline, media offline, media offline. And I hadn't done anything different, and I was
What?
like, "Oh my god!" And then I had footage that I know that I had. I know I had this footage because I saw it and I put it in a special place,
Mhm.
like in my front pocket on my computer. And I knew I had it. And then when I went back to started looking at where all this stuff is, it's not there.
Hmm.
Whoa,
That's weird.
whoa.
It's not there. Yeah. And I was just frustrated. I'm like, at first, I thought it was, I
Like
run through everything.
files.
Is it user error? Is it, is it
Corrupt
equipment
file.
error? You know, uh, and I just kind of leave it at that until I hear from another editor from Tony Merkel. I participated in a film called the Meadow Project, and it'll be coming out before too long. And one of the editors contacted Trey Hudson, who then kind of relayed back to me with a question: have I ever had files, video files, to disappear?
Hmm.
And I was like, why? Yes, I have. Why? Yes. It's going to make a little pickle for me, when it comes to those particular scenes. So I'm going to have to do something creative to, unless I can retrieve those scenes. And I've tried everything that I know of to try to retrieve those videos. But I'm probably going to have to do something more creative to tell the same story using a different angle that I've got. I always use multiple cameras, and one of the cameras that I don't have the footage of anymore was the one that had the main audio. So that was the one I was going to use, and the audio is crap on this other camera. I was like, I'm just going to voice over that. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So it makes me wonder, in the place that we were at, did I catch something on audio that didn't want to be caught?
So,
and, being able to go back in time and erase things, do things differently. That's why I was brought that up.
Right.
Because apparently light and photons can time travel.
Yes.
They know when you're looking at it and when you're going to be looking at it.
Yep. They're in the multiverse. So they are in all universes, all possible universes at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what if some of this other stuff has this same kind of capabilities?
Right.
For instance, if I caught something on audio or video or whatever that it wasn't supposed to be there or didn't want to be caught, and they're like, "Hey, I'm scrubbing this."
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. That's a very interesting take on that, because, I've heard people talk about, and in the ghost hunting field, the same type of thing where they've caught EVPs and stuff, and they've listened to these EVPs. They knew they had them. They knew the file and everything, right? They downloaded it on their computer. They've even listened to them on the computer.
Yep.
Back, and they were completely gone. Weren't there.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing happened to me. Exact same thing that happened. When I come back, my whole film was gone, but particularly there were these particular files that were gone.
Yeah.
And I knew 100% because I had seen them and I knew where I was going to put them, and they were beautiful. And I was like, yes, I did a good job. I'm a real director. And they're gone.
That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah. It's interesting and frustrating.
Right.
Interestingly
frustrating.
It is. It is. But I expect for the Vanish to come out, maybe barring any kind of unforeseen crap like I just talked about, probably January, February, something like that. I want to make sure that all the DVDs and everything are ready to go before I release it, so that everything comes out all at once.
Right.
So,
do you release only on DVD, or do you also do like a download?
Once I'm going through some business legal prep stuff with Relic Films, and once I've gotten the all of the business stuff taken care of, then I'm going to put everything like on Amazon and Tubi and all of that for download, where you can download it, digital downloads, pay for the digital downloads and all that. Or you can buy it or rent it, in other words.
Gotcha.
Digitally. And for those who still want DVDs, I'll still have DVDs.
Awesome.
Now,
That's
DVDs for the Legend of the Downey Booger can be bought at Walmart.com. You can go to Walmart.com and get that.
Yeah, it's on Tubi too, right?
It's on Tubi. It is. It's on Tubi and a host of other streaming platforms. But
We shouldn't have mentioned that though. We need to make them go buy it.
yeah, go buy it.
it doesn't matter. Either one, I'll still get paid.
It's a good one too. I want to
It
talk
is good.
about for a minute, if you got time, the Meadow Project. That was
Mhm.
interesting to me when in the last film. I know you went there with Trey,
Mhm.
and he done this test.
The briefcase.
Yeah, with the letters.
Briefcase test.
Yeah, that was interesting. Did anything?
Not out of that particular one, but if you'll if you go back to that segment, we had lots of equipment failures. So all that was real. We had equipment failures, and there was audio that we weren't capturing. And when we did the Estes method, that's where I was sitting in a chair and blindfolded and had the ghost box and all that on. Now I had two cameras running, and both cameras shut down at the same time. It was inexplicably boop. Okay, and while Brent was walking around getting the cameras turned back on during that session, he looked up and he saw a shadow person. And he said the shadow person was behind me, and it was trying to, what he thought, like enter me, just like trying to jump inside me. He said it would move in and come out, move in and come out, move in and come out. And it freaked him out so bad, he won't go back to the meadow.
Really?
He will not go back to the meadow. Of course, I can't blame him, And if you look on the film, there's a segment where I say stop, just stop, and over my right shoulder you can actually see it. It looks like a shadow. You think it's a shadow of a person, but we go back and everybody else is accounted for. Nobody else is moving. It's that, and Brent said that's when he saw it. Was when that was going on, and that's when there was a camera angle shift after right around that time, and that's when everything had shut down. So you actually didn't see most of that session, and that session, Trey said, was probably the most intense session he's ever been in an Estes method, because what's not recorded was he would ask a question and I would answer. Right. I mean, it would be a direct answer. That's not recorded.
Right.
Other than the generalization answers that was recorded, and that place, I'm telling you, Jason, is spooky.
Yeah, I was trying to get a location from somebody, but they wouldn't give it to me. I can't.
Yeah, we all have to sign NDAs to go there.
Yeah,
and it's ethical to respect your NDAs.
Yeah,
right.
So,
somewhere in Alabama is all I got.
Tennessee.
Or Tennessee. There we go.
Uh-oh.
Maybe we'll get led there one day. But
We've done some pretty good Estes method stuff ourselves.
Yeah. The place did look spooky.
Yeah.
I just wish that letter trick would have worked. That would have been something.
Yeah.
Well, I saw my first shadow person there, and the shadow person, I think, turned into an orb, because I saw a shadow person move across a field, the meadow, and it got to another group that was on a trail on the other side of a small grove of trees, And when it got over into the shadows, then it turned into an orb, or there was an orb there. I mean, exactly right where it went. So I'm surmising that it turned into an orb. And then when that other group said that, there was a girl in there, is like, we're being watched. It's freaky, whatever. I want to go. She got so freaked out that, they turned on all their lights and they started moving back around the trail, and they eventually met up with us. But as they were walking back down the trail, the orb was right behind them, just following them. And I was like, huh. So my story and her story, they meet up together.
Right.
They
So you got corroborating evidence, and that's what's awesome to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very interesting. It's an extremely interesting place. If you haven't had Trey Hudson on, you might want to reach out to him and see if he'll come on your show one day and just talk about all the strange weirdness that goes on there, because it's certainly a fascinating place.
Yeah, we'll try to do that.
Yeah, I think so.
When you were sitting there doing the Estes method, did you feel anything trying to take over you? Like, when he said he's seen the shadows behind you jumping in and out?
If I'm going to be honest about that, I don't remember anything from that.
Oh, wow.
I have no memory from the Estes method, other than like memories of like an apocalyptic world.
Mm-hmm.
Just like dead babies around, and just it was very disturbing scene.
Wow.
Other than that, I have zero memory of the Estes method.
That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, because I've never had anything like that doing the Estes method. We've had some really good evidence come from it, but I never had anything where I, saw this otherworldly place or anything while I was doing it,
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say that I've done it again since then, and I'm more prepared myself mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of memories from that Estes method, and I saw grays.
Wow.
I saw like a gray. I saw like these, like it was like a gray was like peeking at me, kind of like this, but you could tell it was gray.
Like he was watching you, huh?
Freaky.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Was you doing it like at an actual haunted location?
Yes.
And
yes,
so
it was the Ray County Museum, which is very haunted.
Okay. Huh. I like the Estes method.
It's a ton of fun. But I would highly suggest, if you do, to protect yourself. Mentally prepare yourself. And when the first time I did it there at the Meadow, I didn't know anything about it. I just, okay, I'll do it, and just
Sure.
put the stuff on. Sure.
So you didn't really have much of an idea of exactly what it was. You knew maybe rudimentary. I'm putting this on, and I'm supposed to say whatever comes.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
That's all I knew.
So, what a lot of people don't understand is that when you're doing the Estes method, you become the Ouija board, or you become the scrying tool, and you are opening yourself up, to be able to be the
conduit as a medium.
Conduit. You're a conduit. And so if you're not prepared for that, I could see how it could be a very disturbing thing, because it's like, where's this stuff coming from? And of course, if most people don't know the Estes method, the person that's sitting there blurting stuff out can't hear what questions are being asked. They can't, they got a blindfold on, so they can't see nothing. And
Right.
so they're completely oblivious to what questions are being asked. You just know that something's saying words and you're repeating them, you know.
Right.
And it's an amazing tool.
Also, if you have the camera at the right exact spot, it looks like they're just sitting there on the toilet looking at their phone.
Oh yeah, you mean like our intro of me?
Yeah. And David said, it looks like I'm sitting on a toilet because he got that spirit box right here looking at it and he's
Mhm.
just sitting there. So it looks like he's sitting on the toilet. He said that was funny.
Mm.
No, we have got some good responses. We were at a courthouse, and did we do this method?
We did, but it was like it wasn't on camera. That part
Yeah,
of it. Remember,
because
we
the
did
batteries
the portal.
died or something.
Yeah, we did the portal
Yeah.
on camera.
Okay.
Yeah, the portal's another great tool. So the portal uses the SB7 spirit box,
Mhm.
but then it runs it through two pedals. It runs it through one pedal that takes the hiss out of it. Then it runs it through another pedal that adds a little echo to the voices so you could actually understand them. It gives the voices more depth.
Mhm.
Then it runs it through an amplifier. And so when things speak,
Mhm.
you could understand them.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the
Absolutely a
pieces of
nice tool.
equipment. Yeah, that's one of the pieces of equipment that we have. I think adding that to our equipment and then adding the
SLS.
the SLS camera. Yeah. I think the SLS camera is one of those pieces of equipment that I'm glad that we added.
Mhm. Yeah, you need to get me the whatever kind of camera that is, or the I guess voice modulator, whatever it is you call it, the portal.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, send that to me. I mean, the information about it.
I actually made it for around $100. It wasn't even $100.
That's not attached right here.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Oh, nice.
And they sell them online. Probably, people make them around $200, $300, $400.
Yeah. We could show you how to build it for almost nothing. And
It's real simple.
yeah, so it runs through one pedal
Hmm.
and then it runs through another pedal and then into this little amplifier. And like I said, it takes all the hiss, all the psh, psh, psh out of it
Right.
and everything. And it makes
Makes
it to where it goes from kind of guessing, like you get when you're just listening to the SB7. It takes that guessing, like, did it say this or that? And it makes the words a lot more audible.
Yeah.
It does.
Oh, nice. That would be extremely useful in my next film.
Yeah. If I got the idea, because the guy I watch on TV all the time, Nick, he was with Zach Bagans a long time ago, but he's got his own show. Nick,
Hmm.
he always used a portal, and it was just amazing what he got to come through there.
Cindy says, I would love to see the SLS, how the SLS works. That one, we did a build on it ourselves too. So to buy an SLS camera, you're going to spend about $500. And we actually did a video on how you could build one yourself for about $200. And if you have some of the stuff, you could do it even cheaper. So if you have a Windows tablet already, that's probably one of the most expensive parts of it all. It's because it has to be a Windows tablet. But
Don't you just love how cheap all this equipment is?
Yes.
Going out and doing all this.
Yes. And what's funny though is when we started doing paranormal investigations, this was our tool, our cell phone. When we started, this is what we did our EVPs with and stuff.
EMF, EVP.
Yeah, I mean, because these things you could actually get some pretty decent programs to do EMF with. Like you get close to stuff and it'll read the EMF coming off of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're getting into it, we do a matter of fact, we just got asked to do another talk on the paranormal. This one's to UT.
Yeah, a class at
UT,
University of Tennessee.
So February we did a talk. Now and then at the Knoxville Public Library, and then they immediately booked us for October to do another talk. And then just what was it, 2 or 3 days ago? We got UT wanting us to do a talk there, but that's one thing that we tell people is that if you're interested in these kinds of fields,
Mm-hmm.
get into it as easy as you can. And this, you can't get any easier than this.
Yeah, right.
And
pretty much everybody's got one of those.
Yeah. And then if you decide you like it, then you could start getting the equipment that really costs money,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it was the same way with podcasting. Jason and I started doing podcasting in 2012.
This is one of my cheaper ones.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, I like that.
This is my side camera.
Man.
The one that I call the Beast is locked up in its cradle.
It's got that big shoulder mount, don't it?
Yeah, well, you can put them on a shoulder mount. Yeah. Absolutely. I prefer to put them on a tripod if I'm just doing a static interview, Mm-hmm. I try not to take the Beast out into the field. That thing's heavy. It's heavy, so I try not to take it out. But when I do, it goes on a shoulder mount.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What's interesting too is nowadays, especially in the last couple of years, more and more Bigfoot and cryptid investigators are starting to use a lot more paranormal equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
And,
any Bigfoot researcher who's worth their salt has to admit that when you're out doing this Bigfoot research, that you're going to experience the paranormal stuff too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It just happens. I'm sorry. It just does. Because I will say, I went from when I first started, I thought it was nothing but a wood ape because, I didn't know any better. I was ignorant. But I intentionally did not listen to anybody. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't get anybody's opinions about it.
Yep.
I wanted to form my own about the evidence that we were creating. So my mind was opened when I started seeing orbs and all this other stuff. And now some of the things that I encountered, like the footprints stopping in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
All of this makes sense now. But
right.
So I no longer think it's just some dumb wood ape.
Right.
I don't think that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gone down that field a lot. We've had people on the show, that are pretty hard-lined and hard-nosed with, it's flesh and blood. It's nothing else. You're making things up and making it harder for people to believe in this stuff with throwing the woo in it, and all that stuff. But when you hear as many people talk about it as we have over all these years that we've been doing this show, more times than not, you have woo aspects to every encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a few that does not, but those are usually encounters like my own encounter. There's no woo with my encounter, but it was a very brief encounter. I only saw
it in the daytime.
No, it was nighttime when I saw him. So I used to be a over-the-road truck driver. My wife and I, she did the daytime driving. I did the nighttime driving. And we were going on I-90, and we was in Washington, was going west. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. Me and the wife had already changed, and I was driving. And so, anybody ever been out that way that late at night, there's hardly any cars on the road. I mean, it's just dead.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a slight fog bank. So about 4 car lengths ahead of you, you'd be able to see maybe a tag light and the rear lights on a car at nighttime. That's about it. You couldn't make out a car, just the lights. And I'm just driving along. Like I said, it's about 11 o'clock at night, just doing what I do. And next thing I know, coming out of the median, the Bigfoot just comes right out of the median, walks across or runs across the interstate and back up the other side of a mountain that's right there. And he did it so fast that I was doing probably 65 miles an hour. I think that's about what the speed limit is through there. But he did it before I could get to him.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're unnaturally fast, aren't they?
yeah, and he was big. Like I said, if I pulled over to the side of the road and rolled down my window in that 18-wheeler, him and I could have a face-to-face conversation.
Wow.
No problem. Yeah, he was huge.
Yeah, we had a encounter this past October where one went across the road in front of us, but it was on all fours, and it was gone in a flash. You know, just it was so they're unnaturally fast.
Yeah, I heard when they drop down on all fours is when they really they're really wanting to book it. They can do it on all fours.
Yeah, you know the grade on the each side of the road, and this is in North Georgia. It was like this. I could understand why it was on all fours to begin with.
Right?
Because it didn't make sense to stand up.
Yeah,
if you're on all fours, you could travel better. But man, it was moving. Oh, it was moving so fast. But it did leave some footprints behind, and it was 17.5-inch footprints it left behind.
Wow.
Good Lord.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a big troop. I wasn't stopping.
Yeah, we did stop. I was actually there filming for The Vanished. And and unfortunately I had a new camera guy. He didn't know to film while we were actually traversing from one to our investigation spot. So I didn't tell him, and I forgot. It's my fault. But I mean, I did figure out some things for it. When they travel on all fours, they don't travel like this. They travel like this. With their hands.
So kind of like a gorilla, like
they're like on their knuckles. And this one particular one, maybe it had arthritis or something a little bit in its finger, because one knuckle was sticking out a little bit more when it started going up the bank, and it was smooth except for one spot that was kind of dug out, and it was consistent all the way up. So like you say, oh, it was a bear. Well, a bear would extend its claws, and you would see claw marks all the way up. That's what we were looking for. I'm like, man, this is no bear. I saw exactly what this thing was. But
it's hard to say it's a bear when you saw it.
It's very hard to say it's a bear. We actually saw it, and this thing was so black. It's like it absorbed the light around it. It was fuzzy black. It was so black it was fuzzy. I mean, not like
a hazy type, like
like a hazy. It was like hazy, and we were very close to it. I mean, we're within headlights,
right.
How far the headlights shine, I don't know, but we were that close.
Wow.
So,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So, like I say, if nothing else, I did figure out that they travel like this, they put much like a gorilla does.
Right.
If you watch a gorilla, they kind of travel like that too. Yes. Just like a gorilla. They do the same thing.
That's interesting though, because then that makes you go, are they physically, do they do things like what we would think a gorilla would do when it comes to stuff like that,
Yeah, well, I can say if you go back and really listen to those vocalizations in the LBL film, and you start comparing it to other animals, when you get to a gorilla, it's very close to that. Now, not exact, but it's very
Right.
close to it.
That's
So,
interesting.
hmm
I think
I will say that they have tendencies that are very gorilla-like.
right, and that makes you wonder as far as I mean territorially, I could see them throwing and trying to get you to leave by doing the bluff
Mhm.
charges and do all the things that they purportedly that they do. But at the same time, I wonder if because we all know that these things are smart,
Mhm.
they're able to stay away from us for one. I
Mhm.
mean, they're pretty smart. They
Mhm.
know not to be around people.
Mhm.
Um, and that if these things are done in that way to make us just that fight or flight, just trigger that fight or flight in us, like, oh, something big is over there that's going to eat us, so we need to run. If
Mhm.
if it's done purposefully, a lot of that other stuff is just for that one reason.
Mhm. You know, at one of our locations, uh, we really changed our tactics. Instead of reacting to the stones or whatever they would throw, we would ignore them. And, we would just keep carrying on. We might say, there's a rock throw, but we wouldn't turn or anything like that.
Mhm.
And then we would find they get bigger and they get bigger and bigger. And eventually, they're like, they're doing whatever they can to get your attention is all. It's like a game, you
Right.
know. And as soon as you acknowledge them, they stop. Like, hey, you got their attention. But, there was one time where I'd pick up a rock and I had some on me. 'Cause I kind of expected stuff like that. So when the rock started throwing, I could figure out the direction. I'd go, whoop, it started throwing one back.
Oh Lord.
Oh, I don't think that was smart.
Now, what did that do anything though? Did they react to it?
Yeah, you heard a big huff and a growl, and it's like a. They didn't like it, you
He's
know.
like,
Um,
he's playing the game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but it didn't, it didn't hurt us, but it just kind
Right.
of growled, and uh, the activity stopped after that. But
That's crazy.
they have a sense of humor too, I think.
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
Do you
That's
think some
interesting.
of them tend to be more evil? I mean, more like I've heard some that, like in Alaska, that where they attack
Yes.
people. I just
Like
wondered.
Portlock.
Yeah,
I haven't encountered those, so I can't say that. I think it would be irresponsible of me to say that there's none out there that's not
Right.
mean.
Right.
I think that would be irresponsible. Have I encountered some drastically mean ones? I don't think so. I think I've encountered some that wanted to establish their dominance.
Right.
yeah,
Um,
especially that one with the growl over in
yes,
LBL. Yeah,
I think they were establishing. Hey, this is our land. You come into our house, and they were establishing their dominance. Is really what I think they were what was going on. Um, I think there was potential to be attacked, during that time, but they chose not to.
Right.
Uh, I don't think we would have had the firepower enough. We were armed, but I don't think we would have had the firepower to put even one down. But even if you did, then what do you do about all the other ones that surround you?
Right.
And they move unnaturally fast.
I
I'm
can say
telling you.
yes. Yeah, I can say yes to that because I've
Um,
definitely witnessed it, and
yeah.
it
So
was amazing.
if they want you, they're going to get you.
Yeah.
For one, you probably won't even know they're there until it's too late.
Hmm.
And I think all this, bluff charging and blah, all that. I think it's just trying to scare you away. I don't
Yeah.
think they're really trying to hurt you. They just,
Right.
hey, get out of here. I think that's all they're trying to do. I don't think in those instances they would actually hurt you. I think, where they would actually want to try to hurt you, you never see them. I think that would make more sense. More like a cat or something stalking you. You don't know it's there until it's too late.
Yeah.
I think that would make more sense. I think all the other times they're just, blowing hot air, and you could probably get away with blowing a little bit of hot air back as long as you didn't cross too much of a line, like when I, did the roar back at him and he started stomping, I don't know what the heck I said, but he stomped at me.
He was like, stop that. Stop that. You don't know what you're saying.
Exactly. So,
you're calling my mama or something.
Do I think they're evil? I don't, what is evil? I don't know.
That's relative, really.
It is. If you take the perspective of a deer, a hunter is very evil because it's coming out to kill you. But to the hunter, he's just trying to eat.
Yeah, it's food.
It's your perspective. So, but are they dangerous? I would say it would be irresponsible of me to say that they're not. I think they have the potential to be, and you should take caution. Don't be scared to go out into the woods or anything, but just be cautious.
Right. My wife she put on there. She says we had one pull up an entire rose bush at the house there. We planted a few years back a bunch of roses. These were 4 foot tall bush roses, and you have to plant them when you get them and they're that big. You have to plant them pretty deep in, and so we had planted them in. Came back the next morning, and something had just like grabbed it, pulled it up, and then set it down beside the hole where it just pulled it up from.
Did you check in the hole?
No, I just buried it back again because my wife was pretty mad. What's doing this to my rose bushes? It's gonna kill them.
Well, check if you see it again. Check to see if they put anything in the bottom.
Yeah, they might have. Yeah, they didn't think about it.
Just check.
Because we had it that year. What was really weird was that year we was planting a lot of stuff around the yard, and we had it happen to quite a few things. Where it literally was pulled up, just like that rose bush, just kind of pulled up and set to the side. And then the hole was there. But what stood out the most was like, what's going to grab a 4 foot tall, big rose bush, pick it up and set it next to it. Some of these other plants were pretty small. So we're like, I don't know. But
did it block a window or anything?
No, it was over by our garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, so sometimes they're peepa toms too. So you planted something in their way, they were like, "Hey, let me move it." But they have the strangest concept of gifts and things. Sometimes you might find something that's, I don't know, tied up in a little knot, and give to you. I'm like, hey, thanks. I've always wanted a twig just tied up in a knot. I've always wanted that. Thanks. They do crazy stuff like that. So if you frequent a spot and, like I'd leave them marbles or like I have found out that they're very OCD. So I like take rocks and I'll purposefully arrange them in a non-pattern, and come back in a little while and they'll be arranged in threes or something like that.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so they're very OCD. Yeah, that's what we would call it, OCD. They have compulsion to put things in order.
That's my wife.
Well, Greg, we got about 5 minutes left. If you want to go ahead and give out, where people can see your films.
Oh, absolutely. The Legend of the Downey Booger, you can find it on Tubi TV and many other streaming platforms. And you can also buy a physical copy from Walmart.com, The Legend of the Downey Booger, that is. The Land Between the Lakes, you can get it on relicfilmsmedia.com. That's relicfilmsmedia.com. And you can also contact me directly for a DVD. But you can see it on relicfilmsmedia.com. And my next film that's going to be coming out is called The Vanished. It'll be out in roughly January or February. And you'll be able to find it again on relicfilmsmedia.com and many other streaming platforms a few months after that.
And then, of course, they'll be able to see you in next weekend, right? At the Bigfoot
Yes, you'll be able
conference
to see me at my booth at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. There in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So please come by. If you're in that area, please come by and see me. I would love to see you. We'll be have DVDs there for sale. And if you have anything to sign, I would love to sign it for you.
We'll be there also.
Yeah,
So we're going to have to come by and see you.
Yeah, gonna
I'll be there.
get you to sign our DVD.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Would love to. Would love to.
Absolutely.
Well, we want to thank you again for coming on and spending some time with us. We enjoyed it.
Mhm.
I like to
do it again sometime.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate
And
it.
hopefully you can go the Sunday night after the conference. Cade's
I think
Cove.
I'm probably going to take you up on that invite.
We're going to have fun. We're going to,
Mhm.
a lot of these gadgets that we showed you tonight will be there too. So,
Yay.
yeah.
Get to
So you
see
get
them
to
in
see them working, you know?
Mhm.
So,
All right, we're gonna head out. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Greg. You have a
And
good
thanks
night.
everybody for watching.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. And remember,
Remember,
you can find us at paranormal411.org, Paranormal 411 on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Rumble. You can tune in live every Thursday from 7 to 8 Eastern Time. Oh, Saturdays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Saturdays from 10 to 11 if you're in the metro Atlanta area. You can catch us on WDJY FM, that's 99.1 FM. For listeners outside of Atlanta, you can still listen at WDJYFM.com, or you go to paranormal411.org and click the link. We're on Subspace Radio and all major podcast platforms. Hey, we've got a book out, East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore Edition 2. East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore Edition 2 that is available on Amazon, or you go to our paranormal411.org or our website and buy the book. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
We'll see you Thursday.
See you Thursday. We got a guest. Who is it?
We don't this Thursday. It's
Oh.
the 31st.
Oh, gotcha.
All right. Thank you.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us. Good night.
Have you ever wondered what lurks in the shadows? What secrets the night hides? What strange phenomena might be happening just beyond your perception? Join us as we journey into the world of the paranormal, exploring everything from ghosts and UFOs to cryptids and unexplained occurrences. From haunted houses to all things paranormal, join us in the search for the truth behind the veil. Welcome to Paranormal 411.